Welcome to Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Miss Jenny and I am your astrologer. This series of videos will be about synastry and also murder charts, looking at the connections between murderers and their victims, or potential murders and the victims. And understand that this currently with the Idaho 4, this is an ongoing investigation. Nothing said in this video is a confirmation of guilt or innocence on anyone's part. It is purely speculation and observation based on what we know about astrology. This may be a lengthy video, so do not be surprised if it is cut into separate videos. So we may have breaks at the end of each segment and then a whole new video following it. Madison Mogen and Kayleigh Goncalves, they were best friends from childhood. And Kayleigh apparently had graduated and was about to move to Texas for a job. And before she left, she stopped by to see her friends and fell asleep at Maddie's the night of the murder, or the night before the murder. Kaylee Goncalves is believed to have suffered worse injuries than Maddie. Okay, so this is the chart from Madison Mogen, and she is a super Gemini. So if you look, wowee, she's got 4 planets in Gemini. Her Sun and Saturn are conjunct in Gemini. She's got Jupiter and Mercury close, not exact, but still there, okay? And all of her Gemini planets are trining her Uranus and making some oppositions to the Mars and Pluto. So the first thing I would say is that she is, and it's also trining her Neptune. So the first thing with Maddie is that Maddie, one, would have been very bright, but also very insecure about her intelligence, so she would have worked twice as hard to learn information than other people. The other thing, she may have had a little bit of a learning disability, like dyslexia. Something about the way her brain processes information would not have been typical, so she's not neurotypical. But that doesn't mean that she's not bright. It just means that she's processing information a little differently, so it's more complicated for her. Also, too, with this Mercury opposed Mars, Jupiter opposed Pluto, she may have had a little bit of ADHD in there with it. So sitting still for a long period of time may have been challenging for her. Now, she does have the Venus in Aries, which is going to add to that fiery, peppery nature of hers, even though, and here's the surprising part about her, right? Typically with all this Gemini, you've got somebody who's got the gift of gab and all this fire. Like, she's very excitable, she's very quick and spontaneous, and very open to new experiences, can talk to anybody about anything. But at the same time, with that Saturn, it tends to, thank God, slow her down and hold her back a little bit. So she does have the tremendous ability to have self-discipline and exercise restraint and be very mature for her age. She would have always been very mature for her age, even when she was very little. With Venus in Aries and the Moon in Cancer, like she also would have made a natural leader. So this is somebody who would have always felt very responsible for other people, and the group that she finds herself in. She's quite the interesting character, and it is unfortunate that we lost her, because she would have had tremendous contributions to the world, and certainly made it a much more fun place to be. Now, with Venus, let me get my pen here. With Venus in Aries trining that Mars in Sagittarius, she's a fiery, peppery firecracker of a girl, because it's also sextile there, right? Very easily bored, very, very impatient. And also, too, she's got a Moon-Venus square added to this mix. So with the Moon-Venus square, the Moon in Cancer, Venus in Aries, she can be a little thin-skinned, and she's likely to take offense very quickly. She gets over it fairly quickly as well. Like, she changes on a dime. It's the classic Gemini thing, where sometimes you actually think they're a little schizophrenic because they will change moods so quickly. So she will get lit up and fired up about something just as quickly as she'll forget and forgive, which is kind of interesting. A little hard to live with unless you like quick changes in the wind, but certainly a lot of fun. Luckily, like I said, she's just as quick to forgive and forget as she is to take offense at things. Now, this Mars that we had at the time of the murder is at 24 Gemini, and it was conjuncting her Mercury. It's close, and also her Jupiter. Let me fix that. Her Jupiter and Mercury at 19 and 27 Gemini. So she was taking a direct hit with this Mars to her personal chart, which makes sense. We want to see these things in the chart because they make sense. This would also, if we had the time, would give us a chance to sit down and really rectify her chart. But I don't have that kind of time right now, so we're just going to skip that. So it is notable that the Mars of the murder chart is conjuncting her Mercury and Jupiter. And here's the chart for Kayleigh Goncalves, who is also a quadruple Gemini. Oh my God, these two girls were literally like twins, like peanut butter and jelly, inseparable. Well, at least astrologically, right? They had a lot in common. Now, Kayleigh carries her Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury much closer together than Madison does. So Kayleigh would have been more expressive of her Gemini nature, and also Kayleigh has the moon in an air sign, so it's easier for Kayleigh to be much more quicksilver about things and much more detached. So Kayleigh is less quick to take offense because it just doesn't even occur that's worth being offended by, and because she's just too busy for that sort of pettiness, right? And also too, with this all this heavy Gemini emphasis, it will make her, well, busy. Super busy all the time, always got someplace to go, and the phone would have been, between the two of them, they would have been on the phone with each other constantly, and that would have never changed. Like literally, they could have been 103 years old, still talking to each other. But also with Kayleigh in particular, like the phone would be like another appendage. She would die without her phone and communications. Now, what is interesting, what is the same and different about them, right? So Kayleigh carries a moon. Now, remember, we don't have a time of birth, so Kayleigh's moon could just as easily be over here in Capricorn. I think, I could be wrong, but I suspect that Kayleigh's moon is in fact late Capricorn, and that she was born earlier in the morning, right? Because this chart is set for noon because we don't have a birth time. But I think she was born earlier in the morning, moon in late Capricorn, and what that's going to do, it's going to put this Pluto that we're looking at, like 27, 28 Capricorn, on her moon, okay? Which would make sense if you got to die. That's the classic aspect to die under, because Pluto transforms your life, and murder or death is definitely life transforming. So I think she's born earlier in the morning, which is going to give her late Capricorn moon. Things are the same and different. So Kayleigh and Madison both have fire sign Mars. They're so similar. It's like they're identical twins. It's almost impossible to tell them apart. The difference, of course, is that Kayleigh has the moon, or not the moon, I'm sorry, Venus in Taurus rather than Venus in Aries. So Kayleigh is going to be the more voluptuous of the two. So the Venus in Aries is always going to give you a woman who's a little bit more tomboyish or more sporty, right? Venus in Taurus is generally a little bit more voluptuous and a little bit slower to move. So mentally, Kayleigh would have been all over the place, but she's not as quick to jump or do things as Madison is. So Madison likes the idea of things, whereas Kayleigh likes the actual product, right? She likes things that feels good rather than just sound good. It is remarkable and eerie how much like the chart between these two girls are. They must have been, I don't know, but they must have been like Siamese twins in their friendship growing up. And just for good measure, so you can see what I'm talking about, we've got Kayleigh and Madison's charts on top of each other. Now remember, we don't have a time of birth, so I'm thinking that Kayleigh's moon is not actually Aquarius. I think her moon is in Capricorn. Now note, literally almost everything, this is so crazy, almost everything is in the same place with these two. The differences between them, primarily, get rid of that, right, is Madison has the moon in Cancer. If I'm correct, and Kayleigh's born earlier in the morning, she most likely has the moon in Capricorn, which is going to make them put the moons in opposition to each other. In a moon-moon opposition in a relationship, it can be good or it can be bad. So in this particular case, because they've got so much in their chart that is identical, literally identical, like Siamese twin identical, or what is it, the identical twin identical. With a moon-moon opposition, it does offer the ability to have some balance. So they would have actually been very good for each other, and then they could have balanced each other out, because they would have had very, very opposite reactions and responses to things. So the likelihood of them pushing each other into extremes in one way or the other, because they're so much alike, is actually lessened by the fact that they've got a moon-moon opposition. And also, too, when you've got a moon-moon opposition with somebody, there's always a tremendous amount of attraction to that person, because there's a feeling like they complete you, or they offer you a view of things from the other side of the coin, as it were. So moon-moon oppositions can be very strong attraction factors. So they would have been attracted to each other as friends very early on in life, or almost immediately. Madison has Venus in Aries, and Kayleigh has Venus in Taurus. And again, Venus in Aries is going to give you more sporty, tomboyish kind of women, and Venus in Taurus is going to give you much more voluptuous kind of women. Venus in Aries, Madison wouldn't have been much for status or expensive things. I mean, she's not going to turn it down, not for sure, right? She likes things, but Madison would have been more driven by things that had sentimental value. So it meant more to her if there was something personal in the gift, right? So it didn't matter how expensive or cheap it was about the feeling behind it, right? The personal connection. Kayleigh, on the other hand, would have been very focused on the value of things. She would get very offended if you didn't give her the very best of something, because in her way of experiencing things with that Venus and Taurus, right, the value of something represents the value you have for her. So that's how those two are also different. And also, Kayleigh wouldn't have had the same, yeah, I don't see it, maybe. 24. So Kayleigh has Mercury retrograde and Madison does not. I think, does anybody know if Kayleigh wears glasses? Because I'm kind of feeling like there's either an issue with her vision, like one eye is weaker than the other, or she's got one leg shorter than the other. That would be interesting. But we don't know, and I don't know that anybody's ever going to tell us. But if anybody knows, please let me know. Okay, and these are the charts we're about to do for Xana and Ethan. Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin were romantically involved with each other and had been asleep in the same bed on the night of their murder. They were on the second floor of the house, and the other two victims were sleeping on the third floor. The two roommates on the first floor remained alive and were never bothered. Xana is believed to have bruises from attempts to defend herself or escape the murderer. Okay, this is the chart for Xana Kernodle. Disregard I'll scribble on the inside. We're going to get to that in a second. So Xana is a Scorpio. She's got Mercury, Cazimi, the sun in Scorpio. Again, a very bright girl, very incisive, certainly very intuitive. And also her moon is somewhere in Pisces. Again, we don't have a time of birth. That moon will move back and forth a few degrees depending on when she was actually born. With the moon trining the sun Mercury and Mercury in the heart of the sun like that, she's extremely intuitive and she's really, really good at reading people. Not sure what her major was, but she would have gone into medicine or counseling, things that involve getting deep below the surface and are oriented towards fixing, reforming, or repairing people, right? Rather than things. She has Venus retrograde in Scorpio, so she, let me back up a little bit here. So she has Venus retrograde in Scorpio and she has Mars in Libra with this trine in the water signs, Mercury, Cazimi, the sun. One of the strengths and challenges that Xana would have had in this lifetime is that, one, she would have been an absolute genius when it comes to people. So if there was anybody who was capable of manipulating or masterminding or basically getting people to do what she wants them to do, like the clean, bloodless kill, like clean hands, no blood, because somebody else did the dirty work for you, Xana would have been very, very good at that. Xana would be great in anything that requires persuasive skills, like literally being able to read people and get them to persuade them to do the things you want them to do. So that's her strength. Her challenge, however, is, go towards the light, Luke. Oh, so using her powers for good, and resisting the temptation to do what comes easier, it would have been a big challenge for her most of her life. Also, I believe I remember somebody said her mother was a drug addict. Now, I don't believe that having somebody in the family that's a drug addict, it means that you will become a drug addict. But I will say that with her chart and people I have seen that have had similar things in their chart, like being a hustler or a drug, not a concierge of recreational pharmaceuticals, would have been very, very easy for her, right? I'm not saying she was. I'm just saying if that's the road she chose to go down, she would have done really, really well at it. And the challenge in this lifetime is that she cannot go down those roads because she's supposed to be doing better things with herself. And listen, if you've ever had to fight a bad habit or fighting the urge to take the easy way out of things, sometimes those challenges can be really damn hard. Okay, now typically with Scorpios, you get people who are very private and don't want people in her business, but she's got Jupiter and Leo, so she's also a bit of a performer. And she's a bit of a party animal. She loves to have fun, and if you look, her Jupiter is opposing her Uranus. So she has her moments where she will be you won't even know she's there, and then out of nowhere she'll bust out with a song or some type of performance in the middle of the thing, like, whoa, where did you come from? Kind of thing. Lots and lots of fun. And again, the big cross that she has to bear in this lifetime has a lot to do with integrity. Bless her heart. Okay, so now let's get down to some stuff here. Let's get into some stuff. Now, what I thought was interesting about Xana's chart is that this eclipse, well, first we'll start with Mars. So the Mars of the murder chart is here on her Saturn. I'm not completely sure that Xana is not instrumental in the events of this evening. I'm not sure what that's about. I don't know. It may be Xana, it may be her relationship with somebody, but Xana has a very close connection to the murder, right? More specifically than the other girls. Well, that's not true. The other girls carry Mars on their Gemini planets, all three of them. All three of these girls are really taking a hard hit with the Gemini. Sorry, forgive me. Now, the other thing, too, is that transiting Jupiter is squaring her Saturn. So in this particular time period, she would have been dealing with some very, very large pressures in terms of keeping it together. So all the stuff that makes her think she's crazy. And she has her moments when she's not completely sure of her own sanity. And she may have very well, possibly with a chart, she may very well have been on antidepressants or needed some type of pharmaceutical assistance to kind of keep her head together, because there's a lot here that makes her very, very sensitive, maybe too much so. And also a lot here that makes her head spin faster, her thoughts run faster than she can necessarily keep up with. So she may have been on anti-anxiety or antidepressants out of necessity at this time, and this Jupiter barreling down on her Saturn these last couple of months may have really been like pushing the issue with her. And this is the chart for Ethan. Ethan is also a Scorpio, so Xana and Ethan both, couple of Scorpios here. With the moon, we think maybe in Leo, maybe in Cancer, depends on how early in the day he was born. Not really sure. So with Ethan, one of the interesting things about Ethan's chart is that Ethan, with all the Scorpio, it is squaring Neptune, right? So this is going to make Ethan much more sensitive, a lot more passive, very laid back, Mr. Coolio, right? Doesn't really want to get upset about anything. But it also gives him a weakness when it comes to escapism. So escapism can be drugs and alcohol, but it can also be television, hunting, bike riding, anything where you just like literally escape. You just want to escape from everybody and everything, so you can't deal with things. So, these things would have been challenging for him. Now he's got a Mars-Neptune trine. He's tremendously sensitive. I would be really surprised if you are not artistic or musical. And I think he's part of triplets. So all three of the kids would have been very, very talented and certainly very sensitive. We don't know what time he was born, so it's hard to put these things in houses, which is unfortunate. Now he has Mercury trining Saturn in Gemini. And the Mars murderer is there. With Mercury trine Saturn, he's going to be much more organized in his thoughts. He's probably going to gravitate to things like architecture and engineering and math. I don't see a lot of Pisces here, but certainly mathematics, right? But more, if he did these things, I would expect him to be more driven towards the artistic sides of things, or at least that's what I would expect. But he's definitely a logical, organized thinker, and typically people like that gravitate to the sciences and engineering. Now, the Mars murder, the Mars of the murder chart also is here, right? And it's on his Saturn. So there was, you know, again, there's this karmic connection or debt that had to be paid through this murder. And they're all getting it. Every single one of these kids, all 4 of them, have direct connections to Mars of the murder chart. Now, with his chart, also too, this eclipse in Scorpio occurred here and pulled into Sun Venus, and the 16 Taurus eclipse that occurred that week, the week just prior to the murder that kicked off this murder, right? The eclipse would have been here, and this would have been with Uranus, right? This absolutely squared his Jupiter. So there was, again, this looks like this had more to do with him than the other girls. So I don't know what it is with these two. So because Xana had something similar in her chart that looked like there was more of her being involved in a catalyst for this thing, this event occurring, and we're seeing it here with him as well. And remember, what we're really talking about is a catalyst, right? Something that ignites something. It's not the event, it's something that trips or triggers this whole row of dominoes, you know, falling down one right after the other. And for whatever reason, these two look like they may have been instrumental in flipping the switch, you know, and starting this whole chain of events, which is interesting. And I could be wrong. Again, we've never had murder truck before, so we're all speculating here, so bear with me. Okay, and this is their chart. Ethan is on the inside and Xana's on the outside, and again, they have a lot of similarities in their charts as well. They're both carrying a lot of Scorpio, right? Look at that. They both have Mars and Libra, and I think these two, yeah, see, they were barely born a month apart from each other, so they're going to have a lot of stuff that's very, very similar. And again, there's that Mars, the murder chart. They're both their Saturns and Jupiter applying that Saturn. Now remember, his Saturn is much better supported because his Saturn and his Mercury are trine, so he's an organized, logical thinker. He's not that easily destabilized. She, on the other hand, looks like she struggles with depression and some disorganized thinking, and just a whole lot of inner demons, So he would have been very good for her in that way. Yeah, he would have been very good for her in that way. But she definitely had her stuff. She had her struggles. Okay, so Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Right, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Okay. All right, so let's see what else we got here.